And also viewers like you, if you are one of the millions of Americans who grew up watching beloved shows carried on your local PBS station, Mr. Rogers, Berenstain Bears, I missed it, but 321 Contact, my colleagues here tell me, is another one. You're not going to hear that little message anymore. The CBP announcing today that it's shutting its doors after Congress eliminated its federal funding and clawed back $1.1 billion in funds that had already been approved. Joining us now is Bill Nye, the Science Guy. His show ran on PBS for 5 years, but it has, of course, been replayed, rewatched by millions all over the world. I'm so grateful to have you on the show to talk about this, because the first thing I thought of when I heard this news was hearing that, brought to you by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, which I must have seen hundreds, if not thousands, if not millions of times during my childhood when I was watching you and these other iconic shows. Can you just talk a little bit about what the corporation meant for the work that you did and for the kids that you served?
Well, it's why the show became so popular. So for you broadcast historians, the Science Guy show started out in syndication at 22 minutes 30 seconds, and then it ended up on public broadcasting with an extra 5 minutes of programming every day. So if you have a copy of those old shows, hang on to them. But with that in mind, that's where the Science Guy show, became very, very popular. And the show has served to educate people in elementary science for decades. And I'm honored, and it's wonderful, it's great. But part of the reason it was so successful, or is so successful, is we had very compelling research that 10 years old was as old as you could be to get the so-called lifelong passion for science. And it's probably as old as you can be to get a lifelong passion for anything. And I mention it because it was based on research. It was based on science. It was based on provable facts. And that's what shaped the Science Guy show and made it so successful. The same is true of Sesame Street. And the same is true of Mr. Rogers and other shows. So what's going on, everybody, is a little bit in the weeds. The administration is trying to use these rules or laws, which were clearly, in my opinion, clearly never intended to be used this way, to derail the will of Congress. And so they're using these, apparently they're planning to use this business of impoundment of funds and this extraordinary new legal theory, pocket rescission. And there's no such thing, they're making it up. And the irony is that the communities that are going to be most affected by curtailing public broadcasting are the rural communities that voted for this administration. And as one example, I have met countless people, that is to say more people than I can count, who came to this country from other parts of the world and tell me that they learned to speak English by watching public broadcasting, by watching my show, by watching Sesame Street. And one of the ideas of this administration, which is nominally quite reasonable, is to make English the official language. Well, if you want people to learn English, you want to have public broadcasting. This is just an ironic mess up on their part. Back to you, Casey.
Sir, one big difference too with public broadcasting and its funding is that the focus is on things like the science, things like what you learn from Sesame Street, and not on, advertisements. I think I was only allowed to watch PBS growing up as a child. I think in no small part because my mom cared a lot about that. She didn't want me to have to think about the latest toy that I wanted to buy, but just to be there and learn things. What does that mean for kids?
Well, so part of the reason the Science Guy show was funded was through this thing called the Children's Television Act, because in the 1980s, back in the 20th century, children's television was becoming an ads for toys, which is, if you're a kid, that's fun. You watch a superhero animated show, and then you can buy a physical object, a doll, a action figure of that superhero. That's fun and cool, but it doesn't have the educational value that people in the early 1990s wanted children's programming to have. And for you historians, there was required television stations were required to have 3 hours of educational programming a week. 3 hours, oh my goodness, our ability to print money is being stopped. Oh my. But that turned out to be to the good, and it led to this, in my day, it led to this collaboration between commercial programming, commercial stations and public broadcasting, but it never would have happened without the influence of public broadcasting. So the plan right now is to cut it $1.1 billion through this new legal theory that I'm sure, I'm not a lawyer, but I'm pretty sure it will be shown to be illegal, what they're trying to do. But this all takes time. It takes time and time and time. And when you break stuff, it's much harder to put it back together. Take an example from your life. Have a dinner plate. Breaking a dinner plate just takes a moment. Making a dinner plate from scratch requires a factory and centuries of technological development. It's the real deal, everybody. Push back. And you know, something that fascinates me, I don't know how many of your viewers watch the other side, the very conservative media outlets, but they are fascinated with what goes on the mainstream media like this cable news network. So keep up the good work because it will leak through to the other side. Thank you.
All right. Bill Nye, very grateful to have you. Thank you very much.
The Corporation for Public Broadcasting has just announced that it will soon shut down because of the successful Republican-led efforts to defund local PBS and NPR stations across the country. Of course, last week, President Trump signed a law clawing back congressionally approved federal funding for public media and foreign aid as well.
CNN's Brian Stelter broke this story. So, Brian, what does this mean for the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and for public broadcasting?
This means the money is officially drying up effective September 30th. And so the nonprofit agency that sent this money out to local stations across the country is shutting down. About 100 staffers losing their jobs. This is a political victory for President Trump because he tried several different ways this year to defund public media, to take out this Corporation for Public Broadcasting. He even tried to fire 3 of the board members, resulting in a lawsuit in federal court. Well, now that lawsuit is moot. It's going away because the entire corporation is going away. The federal funds will stop effective at the end of September because of the rescissions. And there was a recent effort earlier this week in Congress to try to find a new way to try to get money for NPR and PBS. That fell flat as well. There's simply no way the Republicans are going to budget money for NPR and PBS right now due to allegations of bias at those networks. So these local stations will be they're the ones that will suffer, and they're going to suffer in different ways. You know, I was speaking to the head of a public media network in Hawaii that said, look, it was only 6% of our budget. 94% of the budget there is from other sources of revenue, from donors and foundations. So big stations like that across Hawaii, they will survive. Smaller stations in more rural areas may struggle as a result. Here's what Patricia Harrison, the CEO of CPB, said in a statement moments ago. She said, despite the extraordinary efforts of millions of Americans who called, wrote, and petitioned to Congress to preserve the federal funding, we now face the difficult reality of closing our operations. So what that means essentially is they're going to help local stations and show producers figure out how to survive without this federal funding. And like I said, there are lots of different pathways forward. You know, it's about raising money from viewers and listeners, perhaps in some cases getting states to bear more of the burden. We're now going to find out what it means to have public broadcasting without actual public dollars attached from the federal government.
Brian Stelter, thank you so much for the update to that breaking news.